Okay, we're recording now. Hello, peoples. You guys just
Hello.
stopped talking. Okay, I was like, come on.
I thought you were just gonna continue on as a I don't know.
No, you're supposed to say hi too.
It's like hello internet.
Well, anyway, as you will know, if like dear one person who watched the YouTube video before this, it was terrible and the audio is horrible. Oh well. Now we're on chapter 29. Anyway, Exodus chapter 29, verse 1. Oh, this is the good chapter. This chapter is very relevant to you, Johanna. Now this
Wait,
is,
for the chrismation thing?
huh?
For the chrismation thing?
Yeah.
Sweet.
Now this is what you
Let me
shall.
text them.
What are you doing?
Uh, Texting Sabrina to get on.
Oh, okay. Now this is what you shall do to them to consecrate them, that they may serve me as priests. So this is the ordination of a priest ritual. Take 1 bull of the herd and 2 rams without blemish, and unleavened bread, unleavened cakes mixed with oil, and unleavened wafers smeared with oil. You shall make them out of. You shall make them of fine wheat flour. You shall put them in 1 basket, and bring them in the basket, and bring the bulls and the 2 rams. You shall bring Aaron and his sons to the entrance of the tent of meeting, and wash them with water. Then you shall take the garments, and put on Aaron the coat, and the robe of the ephod, and the breastpiece, and gird him with the skillfully woven band of the ephod. And you shall set the turban on his head, and put the holy crown on the turban. You shall take the anointing oil, and pour it on its head, and anoint him. Then you shall bring his sons, and put coats on them. And you shall gird Aaron and his sons with sashes, and bind caps on them. And the priesthood shall be theirs by a statute forever. Thus you shall ordain Aaron and his sons. Then you shall bring the bull before the tent of meeting. Aaron and his sons shall lay their hands on the head of the bull. Then you shall kill the bull before the Lord at the entrance of the tent of meeting, and shall take part of the blood of the bull, and put it on the horns of the altar with your finger, and the rest of the blood you shall pour out at the base of the altar. And you shall take all the fat that covers the entrails and the long lobe of the river. Sorry, I'm literally losing my mind. The long lobe of the liver and the 2 kidneys with the fat that is on them, and burn them on the altar. But the flesh of the bull and its skin and its dung you shall burn with fire outside the camp. It is a sin offering. Then you shall take 1 of the rams, and Aaron and his sons shall lay their hands on the head of the ram, and you shall kill the ram, and take its blood, and throw it against the sides of the altar. Then you shall cut the ram into pieces, and wash its entrails and its legs, and put with them its pieces and its head, and burn the whole ram on the altar. It is a burnt offering to the Lord. It is a pleasing aroma, a food offering to the Lord. You shall take the other ram, and Aaron and his sons shall lay their hands on the head of the ram, and you shall kill the ram, and take part of its blood, and put it on the tip of the right ear of Aaron, and on the tips of the right ears of his sons, on the thumbs of their right hands, and on the great toes of their right feet, and throw the rest of the blood against the sides of the altar. That's a good place to pause. So notice this is all part of the ordination ritual. So you begin and you have like a whole meal, right? Because like we talked about last time, sacrifices are always meals, and they're always partly eaten, right? The part that's burnt is eaten by God, so to speak, and then the part that's not burnt is eaten entirely by you. That's why they make a distinction between burnt offerings and whole burnt offerings, because there's a whole burnt offering that you don't eat any of it; it's just for God to eat, but it's still sharing a meal, and that's just His portion. But anyway, we see at the beginning in verse 2 that they bring unleavened bread and cakes and wafers. And you got unleavened cakes mixed with oil, and then wafers smeared with oil, and they're all made of fine wheat flour. And you bring them in 1 basket, and you bring, animals to eat. And then it talks about the ritual dissection, so to speak, of the bull. And interestingly, it's very reminiscent of the dissection of the prosphora in the Eucharist. Um, and the reason that it brings up to do this is because this is just what happens when they do like the typical sin offerings. And so the reason that it's particularly bringing it up at their ordination is because it's their ordination, right? So it's like their first sin offering as a priest. And then the important part, obviously it's all important, but the really important part is when they take the blood and they put it on their ears and their hands and their feet. And in the Jonathan Targums, they also put it on their neck. But notice it's always on the right side. So what is this like reminiscent of? Pop quiz. The only person here who's done it is Isaiah.
Kind
What'd you say?
of reminds me of when we were learning about chrismation. Like it
Right,
goes on the
exactly.
forehead, hands.
And so the reason is because in the temple of the Old Testament, right, there's you still have like a narthex, nave, and sanctuary, or altar, right? But but in the Old Testament, it's just called the place, the holy place, and the most holy place. We typically only think about the Holy of Holies or the most holy place because it's got the Ark of the Covenant in it. But there's also the middle space, which is called the holy space, which only the priest could enter still, and only the high priest could go into the Holy of Holies. But that's different, right, than our modern churches. We still have 3 sections, but now the priest can only the priest can go into the back one, and everybody gets to go into the first 2. And the reason that is because of what's called the royal priesthood, right? Which is obviously a thing in the Old Testament, but not in the same way that it is in the New Testament. That's why Peter, right, is like, we are a nation of priests and kings, because the whole idea of Israel, of which the church is a continuation, is well, to quote the Bible, right, to be a priest unto the nations. So everybody's supposed to be a priest unto the nations, which is to say to the Gentiles, right? And what is a priest? Well, a priest is just someone who represents those people before God in prayer and God before those people in virtue. And then the priests that we think of as priests, are priests for us. But we're all priests in a lesser way. And then hence we get the ordination rite of the Old Testament, except instead of using blood, we use chrism, right? And chrism is a sacrament, and it's not just the same as like the oil that you get anointed with on Vespers. But what is it a sacrament? Well, what are sacraments for one, right? Well, a sacrament is just anything that has the real presence in it. And so marriage is a sacrament, and when the fathers say that, they don't mean the marriage service; they mean marriage, right? Because marriage has the real presence in it. Anyway, so it has the real presence in it because it's the chrism in chrismation holds the same symbolism as the blood of the bull in Aaron and his son's ordination, which is to say that they're both sacramental of the real blood of Christ. But you also notice that in chrismation, we put it on both sides of our body. Now, there's 2 reasons for that. One is because they didn't put it in the left side of the body in the Old Testament because the left, like everything left, is like sinistra, right? Sinister, literally coming from the word left, for left. But the reason that was because they didn't have like cleanly stuff back then. So you ate food with one hand, and you did other things with your left hand. And so the left hand was perceived as, and the whole left side, because of the left hand, is like meh. But in the, so why do we do it now? Right? Because people still didn't have as cleanly stuff as we do now in the New Testament. And the answer has to do with the symbolism of half and whole. Right? So in the Old Testament, the point of Israel is to bring the gospel to the nations. Right? Both literally through like the news of it and also through the Messiah. And the reason that it had to be Israel is because you had to cultivate a society which could cultivate a person who could, by virtue of purity, bear God within herself. Right? Which is why the law is in the Ark of the Covenant. The Ark of the Covenant, like we talked about last time, is emblematic of Mary. So that's why it had to go this way. That's why God didn't be like, Eve, you'll be my mom. Right? Because Eve would die on account of the presence of God. So the reason that we put both sides in is because now everybody's included. Everybody's here. So it's like complete, the left and the right. The left being the Gentiles and the right being the Jews. And that's the same thing with baptism, right? Like baptism, according to Paul, is the new circumcision. But in the Old Testament, they only circumcise dudes, right? They don't circumcise women. Why, right? Why? Because God could have picked something that you could do to both, right? And the reason is because it's this. The reason that we do both now, that we baptize men and women, is because the symbolism of Christ being united to his bride, which people think about as a thing that's going to happen in the future, and obviously it will in another sense, right? Because in the future it'll physically will, but now it spiritually has, and we know that because in the Latin New Testament, which was not translated by Jerome. Some people hear that Jerome translated the Bible, and so they think that means the Old Testament and the New Testament. But Jerome only translated the Old Testament into Latin to go with a modern or a Latin New Testament that was contemporary, that was already floating around, and nobody knows who translated that one. But anyway, in that one, when Jesus is on the cross, instead of saying "it is finished," he says "consummatum est," it is consummated. And obviously, the water coming out of Christ's side, right? Well, the water represents the living water of the Holy Spirit, right? And of course, the church is the incarnation, in a sense, of the Holy Spirit. And so it all, and of course, that goes back to Adam and Eve coming out of his side. So it's all like bride imagery. But and of course, there will be a more literal wedding, so to speak, in the future. But it's interesting because, like in the Shepherd of Hermas, the angel who's talking to Hermas refers to the day of judgment or the second coming as the day of consummation. And the reason that's interesting is because that book would have been written after that Latin manuscript of the New Testament that's already floating around. And so it shows that the two interpretations of the day of consummation being the crucifixion and the day of the consummation being the day of judgment are actually not contradictory. Because the Roman Christians perceived them both to be true and called both of them the day of consummation. And I mean, even Christ uses language, right? Like, a time is coming and now is when the dead will hear the voice of Christ and will rise. Right? Well, a time is coming, referring to the resurrection of the dead, and now is, not referring to like Lazarus, right? Or Jairus' daughter, but referring to the fact that you have passed from death into life, right? Spiritually speaking. So whenever Christ uses the language of a time is coming and now is, he's always talking about a time is coming, something physically, and now is something spiritually, right? So for example, he also says to Saint Photini, a time is coming and now is when the true worshipers of God will worship him in spirit and truth. Well, a time is coming because one day we're just going to be hanging around with God and we can just worship him very literally and like right there. Because again, right, worship is sacrifice, and sacrifice is to share a meal. Hence, Christ says, right, you will sit at my table in my kingdom. That's the view of the future, right? That's what it means to worship God intimately. And so that's what the time is coming, and now is, because you don't have to go to Jerusalem to worship anymore. Anyway, so yeah, that's the symbolism of baptism and chrismation and Aaron's ordination. Then you shall take part of the blood that is on the altar. Also, sorry, I forgot to add something as well. There's like different priesthoods in the Old Testament, right? You have the Aaronic priesthood, the Levitical priesthood, and then you have like one Melchizedekian priest, and that's Melchizedek, right? But the Levitical priesthood is lower than the Aaronic priesthood. And so the idea of the reason that the whole like three rooms, right, the narthex, the nave, the altar, or the place, the holy place, and the most holy place, the reason that in the Old Testament the latter two were for priests and only the first was for people, and then now the first two are for people and only the last one is for priests, is like I said, because we are priests. But what kind of priests are we? We're Aaronic priests, because the other priests, the New Testament priesthood, is Melchizedekian, which is higher than the Aaronic priesthood. So it's not like, it's really actually not much like that we get to go into the sanctuary as a new rule. It's actually just like, no, there's just a lot more Aaronic priests now because there's also Melchizedekian priests and they're higher. And that's also why, historically speaking, catechumens weren't allowed into the nave. They had to stand at the narthex. And like if you go to a monastery, they still enforce those rules. The reason being is they're not Aaronic priests. And also, right, because I'm sure, like, if anybody ever listens to these recordings, someone will be like, but you had to be an Israelite to be an Aaronic priest. Not true. Because, again, they didn't have a concept of ethnicity, right? So you just had to become a member of Israel, which did not necessarily mean being genetically related. So, for example, the biggest example of this is Phineas, right? Who is the Aaronic priest, other than Aaron. And his name, Pinehas, literally means a black man, a dark-skinned man. And his mother's name is Pudiel, which means woman from Libya, right? And he's an Aaronic priest. So it's not like Gentiles can't be Aaronic priests. You just have to be part of Israel, as well as being ethnically Gentile. And of course we are, right? Because Paul says, you've been grafted into the tree. And, you know, famously he says to the church of Corinth, which is a church in Corinth, right? O you Jews, beware the Gentiles. He says to a group of Greeks living in Corinth, right? Anyway. Where were we?
Verse 21.
Thanks. Then you shall take a part of the blood that is on the altar and of the anointing oil. Again, like, if it couldn't be more obvious that chrismation and this ritual are related. And sprinkle it on Aaron and his garments, and on his sons and his sons' garments with him. He and his garments shall be holy, and his sons' garments with him. You shall also take the fat from the ram, and the fat tail, and the fat that covers the entrails, and the long lobe of the liver, and the 2 kidneys with the fat that is on them, and the right thigh, for it is a ram of ordination. So what does that mean? The right thigh, for it is a ram of ordination. So this has to do with one, right? In Revelation, Jesus has a name written on his right thigh. Because if you were taking an oath back in the ancient Near Eastern times, you would kneel in front of the person that you were taking an oath to, and you would put your right hand under their right thigh. That was like the way people did it back then. And so here we have the ram of ordination, right? Because ordination is a vow; it's an oath. Hence the thigh. And 1 loaf of bread, and 1 cake of bread made with oil, and 1 wafer out of the basket of unleavened bread that is before the Lord. You shall put all these on the palms of Aaron and on the palms of his sons, and wave them for a wave offering before the Lord. And again, we still do this. When a priest is ordained in the Orthodox Church, they take the prosophoron, right, which is the bread that gets cut up in imitation of the way that the rams and the bulls get cut up, and in proportion, right? Because part of the rams gets burnt to God, part of the rams gets eaten by a priest, and part of them gets eaten by the people. And with the prosophoron, the middle part becomes the Eucharist. The upper part is prosophoron for the priests, or blessed bread, right? That's the blessed bread. And the bottom part is the blessed bread for the people. So it's the same way. But anyway, my point was, when a priest becomes ordained, they take the prosophoron and they put it in the hands of all the priests who are going to be ordained. So they still do this. Then you shall take them from their hands and burn them. Oh, I guess it's also worth noting, because it could be that somebody didn't listen to the last recording because it's so terrible. So it's worth noting that the law, right? Again, the law is not abolished, but it's changed, right? Because Jesus says, "I have not come to abolish the law, but to fulfill it." And fulfill there means fill to full, right? That's why he says things like, "A new commandment I give to you." And also, right, you have Paul who says, "Do we then abolish the law by our faith? By no means. On the contrary, we uphold the law. But the law of commandments, as expressed in ordinances, has been renewed." And then by the crucifixion, he goes on to say. By the crucifixion and the resurrection. And then in Hebrews, right, he talks about how Christ is a Melchizedekian priest, and then he expressly tells them not to do Yom Kippur anymore. And then he says, "For when there is a change in the priesthood, there is necessarily a change in the law." And obviously there's changes in the laws all throughout the Old Testament, and the ones who were permitted to do them were the 72 elders of Moses that we talked about last time, which were the Sanhedrin. That's why Jesus says things like, "Whatever the Pharisees tell you to do, do them." Whatever things the Pharisees give you to do, do them, for they sit in the seat of Moses. But do not do as they do, for they preach what they do not practice. But notice that he tells you to do what they do, because They're the 72 elders appointed by Moses, whose whole point it is to make rulings about things. Anyway, all that is to say, so like, how do we know? Why are we allowed to do prosperon, right? Why don't we actually get like organs of rams and put them in our priests' hands? And the reason is because the apostles and the 72 elders established by Jesus, right, which would be the 72 apostles, which we have a list of, and which we have apostolic succession from, just like the elders of Moses in the Old Testament, made rulings about those things, right? I mean, in terms of the apostles, right, you have the Didache. Well, obviously you have the New Testament for one, but you also have the Didache and the apostolic constitutions, as recorded in Hippolytus and Clement, respectively, which give rulings about ritualism, right? So, for example, in the Didache, it says fast from meat and dairy products. Actually, sorry, fast from anything that has a spine, and anything which is a product of anything which has a spine, and olive oil on a Wednesday and Friday. Wednesday because of the day of betrayal, and Friday because of the crucifixion, in honor of where Christ says, the wedding guests do not feast when the groom is with them, but the groom will be taken from them, and then they will fast. Sorry, the wedding guests do not fast, I meant to say, when the groom is with them. And so in commemoration of the days that he was taken away, right, they fast. And so that would be like one of these things. And in Second Temple literature, right, so like in the Babylonian Exegete, for example, the authority that the 72 elders of Moses had was called the authority to bind and to loose. A lot of the stuff in the New Testament that seems really mysterious is actually just using theological language of the time that people don't know because they haven't read any of the other literature of the time. And that's one of those things. Anyway, yeah, we talked about last time how Jesus sets himself as a new Moses, because Moses has 12 patriarchs and 72 elders, and Christ has 12 disciples and 72 apostles. So yeah. Also, you'll notice if you read the list of the 72 apostles that some of them are women. Le gasp. And also in the Old Testament, we don't know the names of all the elders under Moses, right? But later on, you have elders of Moses who are women. I can't remember. There's a really famous one, right? Isn't it Deborah? Yeah. Female judge, Deborah. I just Googled female judge, and it was like, it just brought me like U.S. judges. Thank you, Internet. Yeah, Deborah. Okay. You also have Jael and Aksha. But for example, let's read the 72 apostles list real quick, because we have them all, and that's cool. And also to point out like how much Christ sets himself up as a new Moses, and how much the 12 and the 72 correspond to the 12 patriarchs, the sons of Jacob, and the 72 elders of Moses in the Old Testament, is that in Genesis 27, when Joseph comes back from Egypt and he brings his two sons Ephraim and Manasseh to Jacob for him to bless them, Jacob crosses his hands and put his right hand on Ephraim and his left hand on Manasseh. And then Joseph literally goes, hey man, you got old eyesight. You got bad eyesight because you're old. That guy's older. Put your right hand on him. And Jacob says no, because Ephraim will become the fullness of the Gentiles. And then when you read the book of Numbers, you have 14 tribes of Israel, because you have the 12 tribes, including Joseph and Joseph's two kids, Ephraim and Manasseh, because they often get counted as tribes of Israel. And even in Revelation, they're there. And actually, so is Joseph. But Dan, and I think it's like Simeon, get kicked out. Anyway, so you have these two half-tribes, which don't neatly fit into the 12, but are also tribes who are called out as relating to the Gentiles. And then you read the New Testament, and you have these 12 apostles, but you really have 14, right? Because Paul and Barnabas. And obviously everybody knows Paul's an apostle, but Barnabas is called an apostle in Acts 14:14. And also Paul says that when he went up to see Peter, James, and John, they gave he and Barnabas the quote-unquote right hand of apostleship. So Barnabas is an apostle as well. And there's two of them, right? And they're to the Gentiles, and they don't neatly fit into the 12. So it really nicely corresponds. But anyway, so the list of the 72, you've got Mark, Simeon, Cleopas, Manaen, Jason, Sosipater, Tertius, Erastus, Apollos, Silas, right? And those two are famous, Apollos and Silas. Crescens, Onesiphorus, Andronicus, Junia, there's a woman. Philemon, he's very famous, right? There's a book named after him. Archippus, Zenos, Aristarchus, Justus, Rhoda, Nicanor. Nicanor, he's kind of famous. Maybe nobody's ever heard of him. But he's the one who James in the New Testament writes his letter to, the Epistle of James to Nicanor. Timon, Parmenas, Prochorus. Prochorus is pretty famous because he wrote Revelation, and by that I mean that he was John's scribe because John was very old and had bad hands. Nicholas, Stephen, he's pretty famous, right? He gets martyred. He was one of the first 7 deacons. Philip the deacon, not to be confused with Philip, one of the 12. Agabus is pretty famous. He comes up to Paul in the book of Acts, takes his belt off, ties him up with it, says, "This is what the Romans are going to do to you," and runs away. Ananias, he's pretty famous. He baptized Paul. Rufus, Lucius of Cyrene, Narcissus, Tryphena and Tryphosa, 2 women there. Perses, Hermes, Philologus, Julia, another woman. Nereus, Linus, he's pretty famous. He was the bishop of Rome after Peter. Clement, he's pretty famous. He was the bishop of Rome after Linus. Evodius, he's pretty famous. Aristobulus, he's not like mentioned in the Bible, but he's still pretty famous because he's mentioned a lot in Papias' works. Papias Hierapolis. He also was the first Christian human to go to England. Herodion, Urbanus, Fortunatus, Carpus, Epaphras, Tychicus, Trophimus, Hermas, Stephanus, Chloe, she's mentioned in the Bible. I mean, a lot of ones that I haven't mentioned are mentioned in the Bible as well, but I just remember Chloe a lot. Eubulus and Artemis. Anyway, back to Exodus 29. How did we get onto that? Oh, I was recapping what we talked about last time. That was necessary context to understand how ancient ritualism pertains to modern ritualism. That's right. Anyway, so we were putting them in their hands as a wave offering. Then you shall take them from their hands and burn them on the altar on the top of the burnt offering as a pleasing aroma before the Lord. It is a food offering to the Lord. Oh, I forgot to mention earlier in this chapter they dressed Aaron, and as we're going to see in I thought it was in this chapter. I've already read it, and I'm just losing my mind. Was it in 28? Yeah, we did. We accidentally skipped chapter 28, I think. Yeah, we did. Okay, we're going to go read chapter 28 after we finish this chapter. Whoops. Because there's something important there. Anyway, where were we here? so lost.
We just started verse 26.
Thank you. You shall take the breast of the ram of Aaron's ordination, and wave it for a wave offering before the Lord, and it shall be your portion. And you shall consecrate the breast of the wave offering that is waved, and the thigh of the priest's portion that is contributed from the ram of ordination, from what was Aaron's and his sons. So again, like I mentioned with the right thigh, right? Because that's the thigh that you make vows on, and here we have the breast corresponding to the heart. A lot of times in the Old Testament, God will tell people to sacrifice things, and then he'll be like, and if you don't obey my promises, you're going to end up like these sacrifices. And so there's a lot of correspondence between the sacrificer and the sacrifice itself. Right, like we talked about last time, how usually God has people, when they're sacrificing turtle doves or pigeons, cut them in half, and then put the halves on the ground, walk between the halves, and say, if I do not keep the covenant, let me be as this sacrifice. And how he does the opposite with Abraham, right? He has Abraham cut the birds in half, and then God goes between them with the theophanic glory cloud. And so that's God saying that he's making a promise to Abraham. And this is Paul's point about how the Mosaic covenant cannot annul the promise to Abraham. And so just pointing out that the breast corresponds to the heart of those being ordinated or ordained. It shall be for Aaron and his sons as a perpetual due from the people of Israel. Due here is D-U-E. That's what I'm saying. For it is a contribution. It shall be a contribution from the people of Israel from their peace offerings, their contribution to the Lord. The holy garments of Aaron shall be for his sons after him. They shall be anointed in them and ordained in them. The son who succeeds him as priest, who comes into the tent of meeting to minister in the holy place, shall wear them 7 days. This is still a thing, right? When you're ordained a priest in the Orthodox Church, you hold the services every day for 7 days. You shall take the ram of ordination, and that's not actually just if you're ordained a priest, that's also if you're ordained a deacon. You shall take the ram of ordination and boil its flesh in a holy place. And Aaron and his sons shall eat the flesh of the ram and the bread that is in the basket in the entrance of the tent of meeting. They shall eat those things with which atonement was made at their ordination and consecration, but an outsider shall not eat them, because they are holy. So again, what does atonement mean here? It does not mean, again, it's such a silly word, right? Because it just means covering. So it's saying those things by which they were smeared with blood. And even if it were, right, that goats could atone for sins, which is you're not allowed to believe that as a Christian, right? Not just like an Orthodox Christian, just as a Christian. Because in the New Testament, right, Paul says, "For we know it is impossible for the blood of bulls and goats to take away sin." And that word impossible could equally be translated foolish or silly, right? So Paul is literally like, this is just a dumb idea. So again, it's not that goats can atone for your sins in the way that we mean atone nowadays, but it means to cover. So the things by which they were covered with blood. And if any of the flesh for the ordination or of the bread remain until morning, then you shall burn the remainder with fire. It shall not be eaten, because it is holy. Thus you shall do to Aaron and to his sons, according to all that I have commanded you. Through 7 days you shall ordain them, and every day you shall offer a bull as a sin offering for atonement. And you shall purify the altar when you make atonement for it, and shall anoint it to consecrate it. So notice, you'll purify the altar when you make atonement for it. How do you atone for the sins of a table? Right? Because again, it means to be smeared with on blood. And so this is referring to the Day of Atonement, which hasn't even been talked about yet. Hence he says when you make atonement for it. Oh, I had something I wanted to mention just now, but I forgot what it was. Oh, right. Notice that they're doing it for 7 days, right? So they're holding the services for 7 days, and these new priests are going to do it for 7 days, but they have services all the time, right? So you'll hear people nowadays, because the Sabbath is on Saturday, they'll be like, we need to have church on Saturday, as if the Israelites only had church on Saturday, and that's what the Sabbath was. But that's not it at all, right? They had services like all the time. It's just that Saturday was the day that they didn't do things. So it's really kind of a silly thing to say or trying to argue. For one, right, because you have the apostles in the New Testament who speak of the Lord's Day, which is Sunday. And we know that it's Sunday just because that's how all the apostolic fathers use the word. And like also, what else would it refer to? Right, but like Ignatius says that we celebrate the Sabbath in the evening because it was the old covenant and it's coming to rest. Right, so the Sabbath represents the old covenant, and so you celebrate the Sabbath in the evening because you're getting tired and it's coming to an end. And you celebrate the Lord's Day, i.e. Sunday, in the morning, because obviously the rising of the sun symbolizes the resurrection, but also because you're excited about it. So it's more of a happy time than at night. Hence we have Vespers on Saturday evening and liturgy on Sunday morning. And even this is like also where we get weekends from. And obviously in English, right, it's Saturday and Sunday, but in Spanish, like we talked about last time, it's sábado for the Sabbath, and domingo, as in domino, right, Lord, as in the Lord's Day. But anyway, I just point that out here because it's not like the Israelites only had church, so to speak, on Saturday. They had it all the time. They just didn't do work on Saturday. And every day, again, this gets to my point, right? Verse 36. And every day, although in this case it's talking about every one of the 7 days, you shall offer a bull as a sin offering for atonement. And you shall purify the altar when you make atonement for it, and shall anoint it to consecrate it. 7 days you shall make atonement for the altar. So it's a sin offering for atonement, i.e. for the purpose of covering things with blood. And you shall purify the altar when you cover it with blood, and shall anoint it to consecrate it. And also, if you've ever been to the consecration of a church in Orthodoxy, we put the Holy Chrism, which, like I just talked about, corresponds to the blood, because it's literally the thing that makes Aaronic priests now. It gets smeared on everything. And the altar shall be most holy. Whatever touches the altar shall become holy. Now this is what you shall offer on the altar: 2 lambs a year old, day by day, regularly. 1 lamb you shall offer in the morning, and the other lamb you shall offer at twilight. And with the first lamb, a 10th measure of fine flour mingled with a fourth of a hin of beaten oil, and a fourth of a hin of wine for a drink offering. The other lamb you shall offer at twilight, and shall offer with it a grain offering and a drink offering, as in the morning, for a pleasing aroma, a food offering to the Lord. It shall be a regular burnt offering throughout your generations at the entrance of the tent of meeting before the Lord, where I will meet with you to speak to you there. There I will meet with the people of Israel, and it shall be sanctified by my glory. I will consecrate the tent of meeting and the altar. Aaron also and his sons I will consecrate to serve me as priests. I will dwell among the people of Israel and will be their God, and they shall know that I am the Lord their God, who brought them out of the land of Egypt, that I might dwell among them. I am the Lord their God. So this is a fun little translation thing, right? Then they'll know that I am the Lord their God. Because they don't know now. No, because the word here, Lord, if you just look at it, it's probably entirely capitalized in your Bible. Because it's, just looking at the Hebrew here on blue letter, it's Yahweh, right? Which, as we talked about last time, is not I am, because that would be Yahweh, right? And that's where he says Yahweh K Yahweh. But Yahweh is third person causative, so it's he who causes to be. So he's saying, then they will know that I am he who causes to be, their God. That's also why, like, when he says, when he's talking to Ezekiel, right, about the valley of dry bones, he says, then you will know that I am the Lord your God when I bring you out of your graves. Because they've been wondering all this time. No, because he's making them. Who else could do that, right? So then they will know that it is he who causes them to be. Anyway, we're going to go back to chapter 28 now, because we missed out on that last time. Then bring near to you Aaron your brother and his sons with him from among the peoples of Israel, to serve me as priests, Aaron and Aaron's sons Nadab and Abihu, Eleazar and Ithamar. And you shall make holy garments for Aaron your brother, for glory and for beauty. You shall speak to all the skillful, whom I have filled with a spirit of skill, that they may make Aaron's garments to consecrate him for my priesthood. Also, notice that it says a spirit. There's no article there. And so I would argue that spirit should be capitalized, because all throughout Second Temple literature, you hear people talking about the gifts of the Spirit, right? Paul's idea of the gifts of the Spirit isn't a new idea. And they get it straight from the Old Testament. These are the garments that they shall make: a breastpiece, an ephod, or an ephod rather, a robe, a coat of checkerwork, a turban, and a sash. They shall make holy garments for Aaron your brother and his sons to serve me as priests. They shall receive gold, blue, and purple, and scarlet yarns, and fine twined linen. And they shall make the ephod of gold, of blue and purple, and scarlet yarns, and of fine twined linen, skillfully worked. It shall have 2 shoulder pieces attached to its 2 edges, so that it may be joined together. And the skillfully woven band on it shall be made like it, and be of one piece with it, of gold, blue, and purple, and scarlet yarns, and fine twined linen. You shall take 2 onyx stones, and engrave on them the names of the sons of Israel, 6 of their names on the one stone, and the names of the remaining 6 on the other stone, in the order of their birth. As a jeweler engraves signets, so shall you engrave the 2 stones with the names of the sons of Israel. You shall enclose them in the settings of gold filigree. And you shall set the two stones on the shoulder pieces of the ephod as stones of remembrance for the sons of Israel. And Aaron shall bear their names before the Lord on his two shoulders for remembrance. So like I was saying, this is why in the hierarchical liturgy the priest kisses the shoulder of the bishop. And also, in this case, the weightiness of the stones is important because that's why it's remembrance. You shall make settings of gold filigree and 2 chains of pure gold, twisted like cords, and you shall attach the corded chains to the settings. You shall make a breastpiece of judgment. This verse is always fun to see how it gets translated. In the OSB, it's like an oracle of something, or it gets translated a whole bunch of different ways. In skilled work. In the style of the ephod you shall make it, of gold, blue, and purple, and scarlet yarns, and fine twined linen you shall make it. It shall be square and doubled, a span its length and a span its breadth. You shall set in it 4 rows of stones. A row of sardius, topaz, and carbuncle shall be the first row, and the second row an emerald, a sapphire, and a diamond, and the third row a jacinth, an agate, and an amethyst, and the fourth row a beryl, an onyx, and a jasper. So these are the 12 tribes, right? They shall be set in gold filigree. There shall be 12 stones with their names according to the names of the sons of Israel. They shall be like signets, each engraved with its name for the 12 tribes. You shall make for the breastpiece twisted chains like cords of pure gold, and you shall make for the breastpiece 2 rings of gold, and put the 2 rings on the 2 edges of the breastpiece. And you shall put the 2 cords of gold in the 2 rings at the edges of the breastpiece. The 2 ends of the 2 cords you shall attach to the 2 settings of filigree, and so attach it in front to the shoulder pieces of the ephod. You shall make 2 rings of gold, and put them at the 2 ends of the breastpiece on its inside edge next to the ephod. And you shall make 2 rings of gold, and attach them in front to the lower part of the 2 shoulder pieces of the ephod, as its seam above the skillfully woven band of the ephod. And they shall bind the breastpiece by its rings to the rings of the ephod with a lace of blue, so that it may lie on the skillfully woven band of the ephod, so that the breastpiece shall not come loose from the ephod. So Aaron shall bear the names of the sons of Israel in the breastpiece of judgment on his heart, when he goes into the holy place, to bring them to regular remembrance before the Lord. And in the breastpiece of judgment you shall put the Urim and the Thummim, and they shall be on Aaron's heart, when he goes in before the Lord. Thus Aaron shall bear the judgment of the people of Israel on his heart before the Lord regularly. Does anybody know about the Urim and the Thummim? Nobody knows what they are. It's going to talk about later, but like the Urim and the Thummim they would use to determine what God wanted, and like nobody knows what it was. That's why it's left untranslated. You shall make the robe of the ephod olive blue. It shall have an opening for the head in the middle of it, with a woven binding around the opening, like the opening in a garment, so that it may not tear. On its hems you shall make pomegranates of blue and purple and scarlet yarns, around its hem with bells of gold between them. This part's funny. A golden bell and a pomegranate, a golden bell and a pomegranate around the hem of the robe. And it shall be on Aaron when he ministers, and its sound shall be heard when he goes into the holy place before the Lord, and when he comes out, so that he does not die. So the idea is that the bells would keep him alert so that he wouldn't slack off, so that the presence of the Lord wouldn't kill him in a sort of death by holiness. What's funny, though, is that like modern secular scholars, a lot of them will try and argue that it's so that he doesn't like startle God and God kill him, which I think is kind of a silly interpretation, because it doesn't say that, right? Anyway, the next verse is the most important one. You shall make a plate of pure gold and engrave on it like the engravings of a signet. And then in the ESV it says holy to the Lord. But if you actually look at the Hebrew, it's just Kodesh Yahweh, or holy Yahweh. The to the is in interpolation. And that's important because the way that the fathers interpret this is that it has to do with idolatry. Because, like I said last time, we talked about this last time because I wanted to talk about it really bad. But in pagan temples, when they put idols up, they would clean the idol, they would dress the idol, and the idols typically had the name of the god on its forehead. And so here you see them cleaning Aaron and his sons, then they address him, and then it says Holy Yahweh on his forehead. And that's all like we also talked about last time with the opening of the nostrils and so God breathed the breath of life into Adam's nostrils. Like setting up the humans as idols of Yahweh is like a thing all throughout the Old Testament and even in the New Testament, right? Like Jesus says, "I tell you truly, what you did to the least of these, you did to me." And notice he doesn't say, "I really appreciate what you did," and he even prefaces it with "truly," right? Because he's homoousios with us. So yeah. That's also implicit when he's talking about, right? Because it says that the Pharisees come to him to ask him whether or not they should pay taxes. And the reason that they came to him with that question was because if he said yes, then the Jews would be like, "Oh, well, you're not the Messiah. You're just some, you're going to make us pay taxes to Rome." And if he said no, then the Romans would be like, "You're telling people not to pay taxes." So they were trying to set him in a trap. And people will interpret him as just saying yes. The issue with that is that it says that they went away astonished. So even if they weren't trying to set him in a trap, right? If they came to him and they said, "Should we pay taxes?" And he goes, "Yeah," they wouldn't be like mind blown. So what's the nuance of what he said, right? Well, think about what he did. He took a drachma on which was Caesar's image, and he showed it to them, and he said, "Whose image is this?" And the enthymeme there is that there are actually two possible answers to that question. Right? You could say Caesar, because it's a picture of Caesar on the coin. Or if you could, because the people standing there could have actually perceived it multiple ways, right? They could have perceived it as that, or they could have said God's image, right? Because everybody knew it was Caesar. Hence, he says, "Give to Caesar what is Caesar's, and to God what is God's." And so he's saying by honoring Caesar, you're actually honoring God. So don't ask me if you should pay taxes. You might as well just ask me, should I honor God? In which case, you know the answer. And that's why they went away astonished. But again, that has to do with that whole what you do to humans, you're doing to God thing. And that's set up all the way back here. I'm going to get some water. I'll be back.
We need like elevator music to fill the silence.
Yes.
Does anybody have anything interesting to say? I guess you could say something not interesting too. Does anybody have any questions?
Sabrina, I call upon you.
I don't have questions yet.
It doesn't have to be about this either. We could just you could be like, when did the Afghan war end? I mean, I wouldn't be able to answer that, but
Oh, I was about to ask that.
oh yeah,
Darn.
darn.
Yeah, no, I didn't. I was just like, that's a question. So, it could be interesting to find out, but
At the end of this Bible study, we should just do Wikipedia
Sure.
speedruns.
Isaiah has a question.
heck yeah.
Okay, what's your...
What? No, I don't.
Oh, she's
Yeah,
just
you did.
picking on you.
She's lying through her teeth.
How could I be lying through my teeth if my mouth is open?
Sound still travels through your teeth.
Passing over your teeth.
I removed my teeth specifically
I'm
for this
looking at
moment.
your teeth,
What?
right?
Those boys.
Your pearly whites are staring me in the face.
my pearly yellows. Because my teeth are stained.
Your pearly
I drink too much coffee.
Just-
Real.
I hydroxyapatite.
The sponsorship for this Bible study.
I do have a question though.
Yeah.
So when the priest, well, when you're asking a priest for a blessing when he's not in the vestments, right, and he's just in his like black, I forgot what they call that,
Cassock.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, the cassock. Like he'll do the sign of the cross and then give you his hand, right?
Uh-huh.
Like, so when he has the vestments on and the cuff is what represents, it was like, or like something through it like represents Christ's hand.
Uh-huh.
Um, and if that's the reason why we kiss his hand, then why do we kiss his hand when he doesn't have the cuff on?
I mean, it just represents the same thing. It's just he can't wear vestments all the time. But also the hand that he makes the sign of the cross with is Greek sign language for the name Jesus Christ.
Uh,
I'll send a picture. Yeah, this hand. This is what they're going for. Sometimes it doesn't always make it just because this is a hard thing to do with your hand. But yes, ICXC, Jesus Christos. So they're literally blessing you with Jesus Christ.
sick.
Anyway, chapter 29, or chapter 30, aren't we now? Verse 1. You shall make an altar on which to burn incense. You shall make it of acacia wood. A cubit shall be its length, a cubit its breadth. It shall be square, and 2 cubits shall be its height. Its horns shall be of one piece with it. You shall overlay it with pure gold. Its tops and its top. I can't read. You shall overlay it with pure gold, its top and around its sides and its horns. And you shall make a molding of gold around it. And you shall make 2 golden rings for it. Under its molding on 2 opposite sides of it you shall make them, and they shall be holders for poles with which to carry it. You shall make the poles of acacia wood and overlay them with gold. And you shall put it in front of the veil that is above the ark of testimony, in front of the mercy seat that is above the testimony, where I will meet with you. And again, like we talked about mercy seat last time, not actually a chair. And Aaron shall burn fragrant incense on it. Every morning when he dresses the lamps, he shall burn it. And when Aaron sets up the lamps at twilight, he shall burn it, a regular incense offering before the Lord throughout your generations. You shall not offer unauthorized incense on it, or a burnt offering, or a grain offering, and you shall not pour a drink offering on it. So that part is important to me, because, I mean, why wouldn't you do those things? Okay, well, I get why you wouldn't put like a... It's probably just not a good idea to like cook a burnt offering on gold alone without a grill or anything. Like, what are you gonna do? Put hot, like, tons of, I don't know. So maybe you wouldn't do it for that reason, right? But that's not the point here, right? Because it's not unauthorized incense, because there's a certain incense formula. So the point here is basically just to be a proselyte and a polemicist. It's basically that, like, you are not allowed to just decide how you want to worship, right? Because if you do that, then you're not actually worshiping. You're just doing things however you want to do them. And so that's kind of the point here, right? Is like, don't make burnt offerings there. Don't put grain offerings there, because I didn't tell you to do that, and you're not supposed to go freelance. Aaron shall make atonement on its horns once a year. With the blood of the sin offering of atonement, he shall make atonement for it once in the year throughout your generations. In other words, he'll put blood on it once a year. It is most holy to the Lord. The Lord said to Moses, when you take the census of the people in Israel, then each shall give a ransom for his life to the Lord when you number them, that there be no plague among them when you number them. That's so funny. A ransom for his life is an absolutely crazy interpretation. The word here is a price. In other words, money. They're really trying to squeeze some penal substitutionary atonement into this as hard as they can. Even though, in this case, as we're about to see, they're not even giving a ransom in terms of, like, an animal. Is the money punished for my sins? Each one who is numbered in the census shall give this: half a shekel according to the shekel of the sanctuary. The shekel is 20 gerahs. Half a shekel as an offering to the Lord. Everyone who is numbered in the census, from 20 years old and upward, shall give the Lord's offering. The rich shall not give more, and the poor shall not give less than the half shekel, when you give the Lord's offering to make atonement for your lives. You shall take the atonement money. Sorry. You shall take the atonement money from the people of Israel, and shall give it for the service of the tent of meeting, that it may bring the people of Israel to remembrance before the Lord, so as to make atonement for your lives. The Lord said to Moses, You shall also make a basin of bronze with its stand of bronze for washing. You shall put it between the tent of meeting and the altar, and you shall put water in it, with which Aaron and his sons shall wash their hands and their feet. When they go into the tent of meeting, or when they come near the altar to minister, to burn a food offering to the Lord, they shall wash with water, so that they may not die. Again, right? Unholiness in the presence of holiness. Sorry, I'm drinking more water. Also, let's go back to verse 16 real quick, where it says that it may bring the people of Israel to remembrance before the Lord. So they're giving this money, right? And it's called atonement money because it's for the priests to make the sacrifices to make atonement. But they're giving it to the priests, right? It's essentially their wage and what they can buy stuff with. But it says that it may bring the people of Israel to remembrance before the Lord. But this can also be translated that it may be a memorial for the sons of Israel before the Lord. So I just thought I would put that out there. I don't really know or have a stake in which way I think it should be. I don't know. But I just thought I would put that out there. Anyway. They shall wash their hands and their feet so that they may not die. It shall be a statute forever to them, even to him and to his offspring throughout their generations. The Lord said to Moses, Take the finest spices, of liquid myrrh 500 shekels, and of the sweetest smelling cinnamon half as much, that is 250, and 250 of aromatic cane, and 500 of cassia, according to the shekel of the sanctuary, and a hin of olive oil. And you shall make of these a sacred anointing oil blended as by the perfumer. It shall be a holy anointing oil. With it you shall anoint the tent of meeting and the ark of the testimony, and the table and all its utensils, and the lampstand and its utensils, and the altar of incense, and the altar of burnt offering with all its utensils, and the basin and its stand. You shall consecrate them, that they may be most holy. Whatever touches them will become holy. You shall anoint Aaron, and again, holy here means sacred, right? It's not like whatever touches them will be virtuous, right? Because holy means set aside for a particular purpose. In other words, whatever touches them, you can't use it for its original purpose anymore because it has been made sacred in that it's touched this object. You shall anoint Aaron and his sons and consecrate them, that they may serve me as priests. And you shall say to the people of Israel, This shall be my holy anointing oil throughout your generations. It shall not be poured on the body of an ordinary person, and you shall make no other like it in composition. It is holy, and it shall be holy to you. Whoever compounds any like it, or whoever puts any of it on an outsider, shall be cut off from his people. The Lord said to Moses, Take sweet spices, stocti and onycha and galbanum, sweet spices with pure frankincense. Of each shall there be an equal part. And make an incense blended as by the perfumer, seasoned with salt, pure and holy. You shall beat some of it very small, and put part of it before the testimony in the tent of meeting where I shall meet with you. It shall be most holy for you. And the incense that you shall make according to its composition, you shall not make for yourselves. It shall be for you holy to the Lord. Whoever makes any like it to use as perfume shall be cut off from his people. So notice, you're not allowed to make this kind of chrism or this kind of incense. Which is still true, right? You can't make the kind of chrism that the... Like the chrism that's used in chrismation is done by the patriarchate every year on Holy Thursday, and you're not supposed to make anything like it. Anyway, I'm tired, so we're only going to do those chapters for today. Does anybody want to say anything?
I like that Sabrina unmuted, said nothing, and then muted again.
I said my piece.
Actually, we're going to read one more chapter because Bezalel is in the next chapter. And so is Aholiab. And they're cool. And this goes to my point of what I was saying about gifts of the Spirit. So we're actually going to read one more chapter. The Lord said to Moses, "See, I have called by name Bezalel, the son of Uri, the son of Hur of the tribe of Judah. And I have filled him with the Spirit of God, with ability and intelligence, with knowledge and all craftsmanship, to devise artistic designs, to work in gold, silver, and bronze, in cutting stones for setting, and in carving wood, to work in every craft. And behold, I have appointed with him Aholiab, the son of Ahisamach, of the tribe of Dan. And I have given to all able men ability, that they may make all that I have commanded you, the tent of meeting, and the ark of testimony, and the mercy seat that is on it, and all the furnishings of the tent, the table and its utensils, and the pure lampstand with all its utensils, and the altar of incense, and the altar of burnt offering with all its utensils, and the basin and its stand, and the finely worked garments, the holy garments for Aaron the priest, and the garments of his sons, for their service as priests, and the anointing oil and the fragrant incense for the holy place, according to all that I have commanded you, they shall do." The Lord said to Moses, You are to speak to the people of Israel and say, "Above all, you shall keep my Sabbaths, for this is a sign between me and you throughout your generations, that you may know that I, the Lord, sanctify you." That's like a really poor translation. Again, what it literally says is like God always says, "Then you will know that I am the Lord who sanctifies you." And the reason that he would say that, or the reason is like, why is it true that they would know that he sanctifies them? Because if you're a subsistence farmer and you have to take one day off every week, that's actually like quite the act of trust. So he's not saying like, "Then you will know that I'm God," by the way. He's saying, no, then you will know who it is, I who causes to be, who has set you apart, right? Who sanctifies you. Because you take a day off every year. Or not every year, I'm sorry, every week. And you won't die, because I'll keep you safe. "You shall keep the Sabbath, because it is holy for you. Everyone who profanes it shall be put to death. Whoever does any work on it, that soul shall be cut off from among his people." So again, right, the point of the Sabbath is not, like, we all read the New Testament, so we understand. But also, neither should we just disregard it, right? 6 days shall work be done, but the seventh day is a Sabbath, a solemn rest, holy to the Lord. Whoever does any work on the Sabbath Sabbath day shall be put to death. Therefore, the people of Israel shall keep the Sabbath, observing the Sabbath throughout their generations as a covenant forever. It is a sign forever between me and the people of Israel that in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth, and on the seventh day he rested and was refreshed. And he gave to Moses, when he had finished speaking with him on Mount Sinai, the 2 tablets of the testimony, tablets of stone, written with the finger of God. And next chapter we finally get to the part where they make the golden calf. And we'll say that for next time. Anyway, good night.
Night, dog.
Good night.
Night, Christian.